All right, sports fans, how's everybody out there doing? William Martin coming at you one more time here on YouTube with another edition of the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge Podcast. There is another pivot for all star shortstop Carlos Correa as we've gone from the San Francisco Giants to the New York Mets and now the Minnesota Twins signing the slugger. Initially, the Giants offered Correa a 13-year deal for $350 million, only to have the deal fall apart after Correa's physical with the team. Just before Christmas, Correa appeared to fall into the lap of the New York Mets as the two sides agreed on a 12-year deal for $315 million. But just like it was in San Francisco, Correa's deal with the Mets hit a snag as they had questions about Correa's surgically repaired ankle. Now, the Mets and Correa's agent, Scott Boras, have spent the past several weeks attempting to negotiate the deal. However, a resolution could not be agreed upon. And when that happened, Boris began looking for other suitors. And when it was all said and done, Correa is right back with the team that he played for last year as he's signing with the Minnesota Twins on a 6-year deal for $200 million, loaded with incentives that could bring the deal to $270 million over 10 years. Now, in the span of a month, Correa has lost $150 million in guaranteed money, as well as 7 years of a guaranteed contract. And for my money, something is up if both the Giants and Mets red flagged is physical. Once an accident, two's a trend, and then anything after that obviously is going to be a problem. Now, Correa got paid, yes, but he's not going to get the mega deal that a lot of stars around Major League Baseball are currently getting when they hit free agency. Remember last year, he was a free agent and he only got 3 years, $105 million from the Twins with the opt out after a year. So obviously, there's something there. Now, of course, one question is going to be, is this egg on the face of Steve Cohen and the Mets? Uh, Slightly, but not as much as you think. I mean, I know that Cohen went out there and made the statement that, you know what, he was going to be, after signing Correa, he was going to be the centerpiece of everything that they did free agency wise this summer. And unfortunately, it fell through. But nonetheless, the Mets were still extremely active in free agency this offseason. Definitely bulking up in their pitching staff, bringing back a guy like Brandon Nimmo, re-signing Edwin Diaz as well. Obviously, not getting Correa will hurt because he was going to be the bat that would provide protection for Pete Alonso in the middle of that lineup, and that's something that the Mets definitely needed. But when it's all said and done, it's not a scenario where you can say same old Mets because Steve Cohen has been out there making moves. If this were the Wilpons, they would have put all of their eggs in the basket of Carlos Correa. And if it fell through, they would have not gotten anything in free agency. At least, we've seen Cohen go out there and spend the bread, and I think he's still going to continue to do that. So, of course, you ask what is next for the Mets. I think they're going to take a breath. I don't see the Mets making a move right now because obviously most of the free agents are off the market at this point. I think several scenarios could play out for the Metropolitans. I think they try to play this thing out, see where they're at for a portion of this season, probably make a trade and see what's out there. But I expect the Mets to once again be very active in free agency this time next year because you're talking about a scenario where players such as Manny Machado and Shohei Otani could hit the market. And Cohen has shown that he will leave no stone unturned in regards to getting the players that he wants. Now, this deal fell through. And for me, if it was one thing where it fell through for the Mets and, Correa walked away, okay, that's one thing. But the Mets and Giants were unwilling to give him the long term deal that he was seeking. So there's obviously something there. But on the flip side, hey, Correa could go on to spend the rest of his MLB career with the Minnesota Twins, not be injured, and everything works out fine. It's the risk that you take on both sides. And it was a risk, obviously, for player, and it was also a risk for team. And at the end of the day, it's a business. Scott Boras felt he was not comfortable with the outlines that the Mets wanted in a restructured deal with Correa. And the Mets were not going to give Correa the initial deal that they offered after the physical. It is what it is. It's a business. Both sides have moved on. Obviously, Correa will be in Minnesota, and the Mets are still going to go out there and search for another bat in their lineup. Billy Epler, the Mets general manager, he steadfast, he stood pat. And this is something where obviously Cohen and Epler were on the same page. And make no mistake about it, Steve Cohen's a businessman. He's not going to give in to something that he doesn't want to do. It was a mega sized game of chicken between Steve Cohen and Scott Boras. And again, two successful businessmen. Obviously, neither one wanted to give an inch. And it is what it is. I don't think that this is going to ruin the relationship between Steve Cohen and Scott Boras because, again, it's a business. The Mets have several of Scott Boras's clients signed, and I'm sure they're going to be going down the pike in the future looking to sign more. And of course, if you're Boris, like I said before, right now, who is going to spend more money than Steve Cohen around Major League Baseball? And the answer is hardly anybody. So, with that said, if you're Scott Boris, you definitely want to go back and continue to do business with the Mets, even though that this deal hit a snag. So, at the end of the day, we got to sit back and see how things work out for Correa in Minnesota. We got to sit back and see how things work out for the New York Mets. And let's not forget the San Francisco Giants. I think this offseason, they're in a much worse spot than the Mets just due to the fact that Correa was going to be their centerpiece. Correa was going to be the guy that they signed around their team as the Giants needed something. And at the end of the day, the Giants didn't get anything. The Mets did get something. The Mets are still in contention to be a playoff team next year. So at the end of the day, we got to wait and see. But nonetheless, Correa has gone from the Bay Area to the Big Apple, now back to the Twin Cities. But then again, there is still pending the physical. So this thing could not be done. I mean, obviously, the Twins checked him out before, or else they would not have signed him last year. But nonetheless, you still got to make that commitment to this guy long term. And I'll tell you like this, unlike the Giants and especially the Mets, if this does not work out, and Correa, the injury fears that both the Giants and Mets had do happen to him with the Twins are not the type of organization that will have the ability to eat Correa's deal like the Mets would have. So we got to wait and see on that. So I don't think this thing is over. Hopefully, Correa can get his deal with the Twins, but obviously, this is going to be the most watched ankle in Major League Baseball over the next decade or so. But make no mistake about it, it's not the black and orange of the Giants. It's not the blue and orange of the Mets. It's dark blue and red as Correa is headed back to the Minnesota Twins. So, folks, that is going to wrap it up. And as always, I want to take this time out to thank you for tuning into the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge podcast here on YouTube. I want to take this time out to thank all of you fine folks out there for tuning in. And if you have not already, please feel free to subscribe to this channel. Now, if you're on Twitter, please feel free to follow me at 300 Pounds of Sports. And like I always say, if you follow me, it will be my pleasure to follow you right back. There's also the sports discussion group on Facebook at the Sports Depot 365. Now, you can check it out. Drop a line and be a part of one of the better sports debating sites going on social media. So, once again, fine folks, my name is William Martin. I am signing off, saying take care and have yourselves a wonderful day.